Today I wanted to illustrate Kanban best practices. What's Kanban? Kanban is an orderly way of doing project management. Some companies do it in a disorderly way. There's no prioritization, there's no tool that is used, everything is done via Slack. Engineers are bombarded with too many tasks from too many people, nothing gets done. People keep pinging again and again. The non-technical people are frustrated with the engineers are frustrated with the non-technical people. That is an ad hoc manner. Kanban is a structured way of doing project management. As far as processes go, it's lightweight, it's not bureaucratic. So let's dig into it and see how it works. Kanban uses a board. It's called a Kanban board. This board should be visible to all team members, be it marketing, sales, design, PM, anyone, support. So everyone should be able to see the status of the engineering team. Because not having a visible status causes frustration. Like, why is it not done? What are engineers doing? I don't know. All these things, right? Because it's just a human nature, right? When we see things getting done one by one, we feel at least somewhat happy. Otherwise, we feel frustrated, left out of the loop, right? You can understand this very well when you're on the other side, right? Let's say you make a complaint with a company and they don't respond to you. How frustrated are you? They may be working on it behind the scenes, but if you don't know, you're frustrated, right? So for the same reason, the board should be visible to all. So you have these columns and these cards. Each card states, kind of tracks one unit of work. Here I have used the cards to describe the rules that apply to each column, but in a real Kanban project, you won't have rules here, you would have actual tasks here. Just using this to illustrate. So this column is work which is not ready for engineers to work on, and this is work that is ready for engineers to work on. So basically the way the process works is, anyone can file a task in the not ready for dev column. It's a place to collect ideas, proposals, brainstorms. Somebody is passionate about something, they make a proposal. Someone has a problem, they make a proposal, right? It's not a commitment, it's an idea collection ground. And then it goes to the PM. And there should be one PM in any project. There could be multiple, but one authority, right? So if you have a senior PM and two junior PMs working under him, then you know the senior PM is authority. You can't have multiple people playing this role, because engineers won't know whom to ping. There won't be one person prioritizing. So in some startups, engineers are assigned tasks from multiple people: the head of sales, the head of marketing, the founders, designers, you name it. Everything becomes messy. So instead, there should be one funnel point. Everyone can give their input to the PM, who will take it forward. Then the PM will work with the UX designers to design it. Again, people do not directly ping the designer, they go through the PM. And once it is done, it goes to engineering. So this column, not ready for dev, is the first stage. Once the PM has selected some tasks to work on and got the UX done, and when it is here, then it is in this column. The reason this is important is sometimes engineers implement something and then they are told that was not what we wanted. The engineers are frustrated because they are being asked to do work repeatedly and their work is being thrown away. The non-technical people are frustrated because they are not getting what they want. So often people problems are caused by process problems. Here anyone can create a task here. Tasks should track outcomes, not activities. So let's say login with Apple. We should support login with Apple is a task. So let me create one. This is a task. This task or card tracks all the work needed for this to happen. Maybe there is something on the iOS app, maybe something on the Android app, maybe the web app, maybe the backend, maybe there's some security work to be done. Maybe we need some monitoring, right? A task should always track outcomes, not actions. Nobody cares about actions. We care about outcomes. So this should be marked as done only when everything needed for it is done, including launching, which is where the definition of done comes in, but we'll get to that in a short while. Now, if a task is huge, you can create subtasks, but you should not mark it as done until the outcome is achieved. So in this case, you would create subtasks, mark each of them as done, as they are done, and when the final outcome is achieved, such as users are able to log in with Apple, only then you mark that task as done. Ready for dev. Tasks should be moved to this column by the PM after all stakeholders have agreed and the UX design is frozen. Engineers should never have to ask, is this ready? That's a process failure. All these questions and answers waste time. The PM should maintain this column in the same order he wants engineers to work on the tasks, because engineers will pick up tasks and work on them without discussing with the PM or anyone else. Good process enables everyone to work fast without having all these debates and discussions and Slack messages and phone calls. So the PM should prioritize this. Sometimes people object to the notion of priority. They say everything is important. You should really think about priority as which do you want the engineers to work on first. Sure, everything may be important, but if there are 20 things, the engineers are not going to work on all 20 at once. Which ones do you want them to work on first? You should maintain that order here. And there should always be more tasks in the backlog. This is often called a backlog than engineers can do, because otherwise engineers will be idle and waste time. And the process of moving things from here to here is called grooming. What do we do with grooming, or how do we groom tasks? First, some tasks may be just bad ideas. We'll reject them. Some of them may be vague, so we reassign them to the person who filed it, asking, what did you mean? Some tasks may require some research to be done. Let's say someone says we should build this feature. Someone may do research to find out how many people would want that feature, right? So that could be a task. And there could be multiple people with different points of view, and they all need to agree on what the task is. So let's say the sales person wants something, and the PM may propose it to be done in a slightly different way, and they both need to agree. That's also part of grooming and UX design and everything, right? So the process of moving tasks from the not ready for dev column to the ready for dev column is called grooming. And the PM is the only one who can edit this column. Then you have the in progress column. Task should be moved here by the engineer working on the task. And when he does, he should also assign it to himself. So you see this assignee here. In this case, I would assign it to myself if I am working on this. So let's say this was groomed by the PM, and now I am the engineer. I want to work on this. I would move it to this column, and I would add the assignee as myself. Because if it is in progress and not assigned to someone, that doesn't make any sense, right? How can it be in progress if no one is working on it? And if a task requires collaboration between multiple engineers, say a backend and a front end, one of them should take overall responsibility. He can coordinate with the other person, that's fine. The overall responsibility should be with one person. Diffuse responsibility is no responsibility. So that's one thing. And this is a pull mechanism, not a push. Engineers should not be pinged again and again by various people saying do this, do this, do this. That's a waste of time for both sides and causes frustration. So engineers should finish the tasks they are working on. One of the principles of Kanban is to limit work in progress, because otherwise you're context switching too much from one task to another to another. and everything gets delayed. Humans are bad at multitasking. Let's say you can do one task per day if you unitask. So in a week you do 5. But if you are asked to multitask, you are working on something, someone pings you, says do this, then before that is done you are pinged. Then in a week, instead of 5, you may end up doing 4 or 3. So multitasking is an illusion. People think more is getting done, actually less is getting done. So which is why, if you are an engineer, you should finish the tasks that are being worked on. Whatever the priority order is, let it sit in this column. Once you are done, then you work on the highest priority task from this column. So priority applies only when you are picking up a new task. Priority is not a reason to interrupt your work and say, oh, I am working on a medium priority, but that's a high priority task, so let me work on that first. No. Whatever you're working on, finish. Low, medium, high. In fact, we don't even use low, medium, high in Kanban because they don't mean anything. If I say this is a medium task and you say, no, that's a high task, what does that mean? Ultimately, what matters is when it will be done. So prioritization is the order in this column. So if I have A, B, C, that means C is lower priority compared to A and B. So prioritization should always be relative, not absolute, like high or medium or low. So that's one thing. Once a task is done, it should be moved here by the assigned engineer. Only after it is done. And the team needs to agree on the definition of done. What does done mean? The code should be committed. It should be merged to master. Any necessary end-to-end tests or unit tests should be written. They should pass. If a code review is required, it should be done. And it should be deployed if you are using continuous deployment. Also known as push on green. If you are not using push on green, everything I told you earlier is still part of the definition of done except deployment. So I have illustrated to you two different definitions of done. It doesn't matter what your team's definition is, you may have a different definition from what I have told, that's fine. But there should be some definition of done which is documented, everyone in the team understands it and follows it. If it is mostly done, it's not done. Sometimes engineers mark a task as done. When I ask them, they say it's mostly done. No, mostly done means not done. Right? So that's one thing. Now, the fact that this board is visible to everyone in the team stops pings. Nobody needs to ping you and ask, hey, are you working on logging in with Apple? Because anyone can see it's in this column, which means it's being worked on. And again, everyone has a responsibility to follow the process. The engineers and the PM should update this as required. So when the status changes, it should be moved. And the other people should also follow the process. They shouldn't say, hey, I know it's not on the Kanban board, but can you do this? And the answer should always be no. Please go to the PM, get it prioritized. If it is really that important, let the PM put it at the top of the list. Then as soon as we are done with this, we'll pick that up. But we will follow the system. Sometimes I see founders reluctant about following the system. In some cases, they have a bias that any kind of orderly way of doing things is bureaucracy. It's not. Bureaucracy is unnecessary process. It's a too much process. If you have to fill out a 2-page form before you can work on anything, that's bureaucracy. So when you have process that's disproportionate to the need, that is bureaucracy. But many companies I see which are running in chaos, the process will be a godsend for them to work in an orderly manner. So this is how Kanban works. If you would like me to put it in place in your team to make your team more productive and efficient, my consulting link is in the description.